Hello and welcome inside the CBC Newsroom. I'm Arthi Pol. We are tracking developing news out of British Columbia this hour. Here now is a live look at the Georgia Strait. It's the waterway separating Vancouver Island from the mainland of British Columbia. And we're following that developing news that a search has been called off for 6 people missing after a charter boat sank yesterday. 4 others were on board and they were pulled out of the water after another vessel raised the alarm. RCMP are now taking over the response. The CBC's Mark Carcassol is tracking the latest twists and turns with this story. We know it was just this morning that we learned that the search had been called off, in fact, last night. Yeah, and we're still waiting to see if the search will be carried on by the RCMP, who've now taken coverage of the investigation. But in terms of any involvement by the Joint Rescue Coordination Center, that has now been called off after a long search yesterday. Went till about 9:45 p.m. local time before they called it off. Here's the area that we're talking about. Within the Georgia Strait, about 10 nautical miles southwest of Vancouver Airport, near Roberts Bank. It was around 11:45 a.m. local time yesterday when a charter boat started taking on water and went down. There was no mayday call or anything like that until a passing sailboat came by, and you can only imagine what the people who came by saw. They say they saw 5 people floating in the water, no sign of a vessel in sight anywhere, and they called in a mayday. They went to help these people. They managed to pull 3 of them out of the water themselves. They say they lost sight of the 2 others. So those people managed to rescue 3 of the people involved before a Coast Guard vessel arrived 20 minutes later to provide some help. The search, as I mentioned, stretched late into the evening before officially being called off via news release sometime this morning. Now we're waiting to see where things go from here, what happens with these 4 people who were rescued. We know that one of them is still in critical condition in hospital. The other 3 were treated for minor conditions and released. And we're waiting to see what happens now for the search for the remaining 6. And we certainly know that we've got calls in to try and get more information about that, whether or not a search will resume, perhaps under the RCMP. But as it happened over the weekend, let's walk through just how many resources were poured into trying to find all of the people who are on this boat. Yeah, there were several, using several agencies, the Canadian Coast Guard involved, as I said, the Joint Rescue Coordination Center, various passenger and private vessels that were in the area at the time. Here's Natasha Jung. She was actually on one of the 2 BC ferries on the route at the time of this. She says that they actually got a notice over their PA from the captain saying that they'd been rerouted to help in the effort. And she talks about all the various vessels that she saw in the area.
At one point, there was a hovercraft. Later on, there was a helicopter that came out, and I think just other both commercial as well as recreational types of boats. It was kind of hard to see. Eventually, I did go up to the deck where you could see a little bit closer. At one point, some of the ships were also kind of circling around quite a bit.
Natasha sent us some photos of what she saw. These are from her, as was that previous video you saw. For an actual detailed list of all the vessels that were involved, the Joint Rescue Coordination Center says it deployed a Cormorant helicopter, a Kingfisher aircraft. The Canadian Coast Guard had a hovercraft out there, its main lifeboat station, what they're calling auxiliary rescue resources. The RCMP also had 2 vessels, a Black Hawk helicopter, an H-145 Airbus helicopter as well. So we're waiting to see if the RCMP will pick up the search at all. As for a cause for all this, the cause and circumstances still unknown, still under investigation. Okay, Mark, thank you for the latest on this. That is the CBC's Mark Carcassol.